that I was given when I was sitting in your chair. And 88 Teffel pointed out the horror stories that I heard about drugs were the picture of the brain on drugs, the picture of the normal brain. I don't want my brain to be fried. I'm not going to do the drugs. That was enough of a deterrent for me, and it still should be, just that should be enough of a deterrent for you to stay away from drugs. But the horror stories that I heard about drugs are nothing like the horror stories you're hearing today about drugs. It's not the same. You're in a new era of drugs. It's unprecedented. And so, even though in college I didn't have trouble staying away from drugs, fentanyl still managed to make its way into my life and shatter a part of my family. In 2018, I met my husband when I was entering into law school, and I met his family within a few months. I met his dad, his older brother, his stepmom. Wonderful family. Loving family. I didn't meet his younger brother, Doug, until about a year into being with him. And that's because my husband and his younger brother, Doug, were estranged for about 10 years. Because even though Doug grew up in a great family, loving parents, Doug started rolling with the wrong crowd and Doug got addicted to drugs. At 18 years old, Doug was addicted to drugs, hard drugs. Doug's drug of choice was heroin. And so that fun-loving little kid who my husband used to play football with and protect from bullies in high school was now so addicted to drugs he was committing armed robberies to get more money, to get more drugs. So that little kid spent most of his life in and out of prison and addicted to drugs. And so I didn't get to meet him until he became sober. So around 2019, Doug was faced with a choice by the San Diego courts. Drug court. Get sober or go back to prison. That was a good way to keep him clean. And so Doug was clean and sober for about 2 years. And that's when I got the pleasure of meeting Doug. And Doug was funny. He was super smart. He was not that person that was committing armed robberies when he was on drugs. He was a human being who loved his wife and loved his brothers. He was that boy that my husband grew up with. And I got to know Doug for 2 years. And so, flash forward to 2020. We all know 2020 was a hard time for a lot of people. And 2020 was a very difficult time for people who relied on in-person NA and AA meetings, Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous. Doug had fought his addiction by going to these meetings. And in 2020, the world shut down and those meetings were no longer in person. They were on Zoom. And I know you all are well aware that Zoom is not the same. It's not like coming into school, it's not like hanging out with your friends. And so Doug admitted he wasn't really interested in going to the meetings anymore. It wasn't the same on Zoom. And so towards the end of 2020, Doug started acting weird. He was elusive, he was hiding stuff, and it became pretty clear Doug was using again. And, for drug addicts, relapse is part of life. It's normal. They relapse quite a bit. But this time, Doug was using fentanyl. And my husband and I, knowing what we know and doing the jobs that we do, we told Doug, you are going to die. You're gonna die. You're playing Russian roulette with your life every time you put one of those pills in your mouth. And so On January 12th, 2021, I was standing upstairs in my house. I heard a frantic phone call downstairs. I ran downstairs and my husband had collapsed on the floor. He was sobbing and I scooped him up. I didn't need to ask him what had happened, because I'd been waiting for that phone call since I found out Doug was doing fentanyl. And that morning on January 12th, Doug had gone out on a job. He had gotten a job doing construction, and him and his colleagues were staying in a hotel. That morning, they got their things together, getting ready to go out on the job, and Doug went out to the car and he said, "I'll be right back, just give me a minute. I'll be back out to the car in a minute." Doug went into his hotel room, locked himself in the bathroom, took fentanyl, and at 32 years old, he died. I genuinely hope you do not relate to Doug's story. I don't think many of you relate to Doug's story, because Doug was a drug addict for 15 years. From age 18 to 32, Doug's life was riddled, completely controlled by drugs. He did every drug on the street. Again, his main drug was heroin. For 15 years, Doug had no worries about doing drugs. For 15 years, he built immunity and did every dangerous drug you could think of. And then Doug met fentanyl, and it killed him in a few months. And that's somebody whose immunity was built up to drugs. Again, 15 years of drug abuse. He met fentanyl, and it killed him in a few months. So, when you leave school, or when you go off to college, or if you're dealing with temptation now, your choice is easy. It's really easy. You don't even have to think about becoming addicted to drugs, because you don't get that opportunity. You won't even get the chance to become addicted like Doug. You won't get the chance to build up immunity to drugs and try everything. You won't get the chance because it just takes one time to kill you. So, as Mr. Allen said, it's about respect for yourself and dignity. Don't play Russian roulette with yourselves or your friends. You wouldn't point a gun at your friend's head and spin the chamber, not knowing if there was a bullet coming out of it. You wouldn't do that to your friends. You wouldn't do it with yourself. So don't do it with drugs. You have too much to live for. You're too bright. And you have too many people that love you to mess with drugs. This is not your typical drug talk. I want everyone to look at me and understand that this is not just say no to drugs because your brain will fry. This is different. This is different. This is say no to drugs because that drug will kill you after one dose. Just one. So fight that temptation. Thank you.